Today I'm going to talk about photography, and I'll go over a few things that it's helpful for you to know as you work on the next assignment, the photo montage. The first thing that I'm going to talk about are some of the controls on the camera that are useful to know about to give you more creative freedom as you create and compose and produce your images for the assignment. I'm going to also talk about composition and give you some simple tips on how to really improve the quality of your photography, helping you go from snapshots to great shots and maybe even master shots, photos that will stay with you for a long time. So I'm excited, I hope you are too, and let's get into it. Photography is the art of painting with light or writing with light. And when you photograph, the light is your main source of inspiration and your main source of creating expressions within your pictures. So on a day like this today, it's kind of overcast and you might think it's not a good day to photograph because the sun is not out, but that's not true. Sunlight is great. Sunlight directly above is not so great. Photographers generally prefer morning sun, morning light, or evening light, as those cast more shadows, create more interesting interactions with the environment, and also the light is not as harsh as it is during the middle of the day. Rainy days, foggy days can be great days for photography, so please don't think that sunshine is necessary to get some good pictures. There are three elements to photography that you should know about, and this is also why I recommend a camera with manual controls so that you have the creative freedom to utilize these modes. All modern cameras have an automatic ISO setting, and if you leave it at automatic, the camera will choose the ISO that is most appropriate for the available light in the scene. I do recommend, however, that you consider using the manual ISO control on your camera instead. A good rule of thumb is if there is plenty of light, such as in the middle of the day or in sunshine, you set it to the lowest available ISO, for instance 100. If you're photographing in an area that has less light or in the afternoon or evening, you turn the ISO up to, let's say, 400 or even 800. And if you're taking pictures after dark, you can turn that even higher, maybe as high as 50,000 or 100,000 ISO. Please be mindful of the fact that the higher ISO value you choose, the greater chance it is that the pictures will get noisy and there is going to be less sharpness in your photo. The aperture control on your camera determines how much light comes through your lens. An f-stop of 1.7 or 2.8 means that you're shooting with a wide open lens, and that produces a very shallow depth of field, which means that your subject will be in focus, whereas the background will be blurred out. An f-stop of f16 or 22 produces an image that has sharpness from the foreground all the way through to the background. The shutter speed on your camera determines how long the sensor is exposed. If you want to capture a fast-moving subject, you will want to set your shutter speed very fast, for instance 1/1000th or 1/2000th of a second. And if you want to create motion or movement in your picture, you may want to set a very slow shutter speed so that it captures that fluidity. All modern cameras also has a fully automatic mode where the camera will determine ISO, aperture, and shutter speed based on the metering of available light. I don't generally recommend taking pictures on fully automatic. What I do is I set it to what's called aperture priority mode, which means I leave the shutter speed on automatic and I either set my ISO to the lowest available for the light conditions, or I also leave that on automatic, and then I control the camera using the aperture. So now that you know a little bit more about the manual and creative controls on your camera, let's take a look at how you can improve your pictures by following a few simple rules for better photography. First thing that I want to mention is the rule of thirds. This is going to be the easiest and most efficient way that you can improve the quality of your photos. When you look through the viewfinder, imagine 2 lines horizontal and 2 vertical dividing your picture frame into 9 squares. Instead of placing your main subject in the center of your picture, you want to move it off to either side or top or bottom so that it creates a line that moves your gaze from your subject and into the picture. Always seek to create depth in your photographs, and by placing your subject to either side or toward the top or bottom of your frame, you have taken a major step forward toward making better pictures and being a better photographer. The next tip is closely related, and it uses leading lines to help you tell a story and create a narrative in your photos. Also, leading lines help move your viewer's gaze from the foreground into a subject in the middle ground or background that you want to draw their attention to. Sometimes it is helpful to consider the foreground, middle ground, and background elements of a photograph. When you're doing this, you create a composition that moves the viewer's gaze from one element to the next, and thereby creating a story or an experience in your photograph. Most people take pictures from normal height, that is, standing up. But if you try to change your perspective, you can create some really interesting experiences. So try to get down on your knees or climb up to get a different perspective. Also, moving in really close will help you create more interesting photographs. The final thing that I want you to think about as you compose your photos has to do with the edges around your photograph. When you take the picture, sometimes there can be elements of distraction that creep into your photo. These can be cropped out in post, so once you get back to your computer and take a careful look, see how you can improve your picture by eliminating those distractions at the edges. If you follow these 5 simple rules, your photography is going to improve significantly. I hope you will have a lot of fun when you're out there creating your photo montage assignment, and I cannot wait to see what you come up with. I wish you all the best of luck.